Rocky was novel in a couple of ways. First of all, I saw recently an Academy screening. To see it on screen was fabulous, and it's really, really good. And the thing that was striking was the script is astonishingly good. The script is why Stallone ended up in it. No force on earth could have persuaded anybody to put Sly in that movie, except that he owned the words. He had the power, and the words were good. And then the nature of that story, which is a story of luck, and of course it's plenty clear to me at this point that there's some parallels with my own story. That lightning bolt hit me too. I never did think of myself as an inventor. I thought of myself, first of all, as a folk singer. In the era when kids were folk singers, if you put on a blazer and you did Negro spirituals and you lined up and played your instruments badly, you were a folk singer. And then I thought of myself as a movie maker, because my folk career didn't end very well. And so I decided to put a studio together. We did all the inaugural, really fun little films for the Sesame Street program. But for me to make a moving camera shot, which I always loved, we had to pick this dolly up and get it in a pickup truck and lay our rusty rails and put my pin-headed little Bolexes and tiny cameras on this vast dolly in order to move the lens 10 feet. I began to think that there has to be some way to isolate a camera, which wants to move smoothly, and a human being, which is always in motion. There has to be some way to disconnect the camera from the human, but let the human carry the thing, because I loved handheld, but I hated this. I mean, the trouble with the handheld look for me is that frame, the edge of the frame, is a window. That's my window into this world. It's not our world, it's next to us, it's contiguous, you know. I don't like my window frame moving. I want to be able to see through it like we see by eye. And so I started to chase how to separate person and camera. And I came out with the machine that you will see in this bit of film that I still have. And there it is. There I am running around in a field, exhilarated as hell, because it actually works. And so just before I left for Los Angeles, just before I went to finally show it to the companies that were going to do it, my then girlfriend, now wife Ellen, and I went looking for shots that were impossible in Philadelphia, because the shots wouldn't give away how you did it. That's the great thing about this gadget. Anybody who knew anything would look at the film and go, oh my God, what is that? It had a fiber optic viewfinder so that one eye is looking through this 6-foot pipe into the lens, and the other eye is looking to see where you're running. So stairs were not a really good idea, particularly stairs that start and stop like the Art Museum steps. But we were there, you know, we parked up the top. We got a slate. I said, Ellen, let's run down here. You run down, I'll follow you down, and then we're done, and I can go to LA. By God, she ran down those steps like a gazelle, and I had a burst of adrenaline. I followed her all the way down, and it was good. It was really good. It was better than the other stuff with the older rig. Even though it was lighter, it was more stable, which was amazing to me. And I didn't fall down, which was great. And then she ran back up. And I ran all the way back up after I kind of ran out of steam about the last landing. There are a lot of steps in the Art Museum. I mean, then that was just the Art Museum. Now it's an icon. Thousands of people run up and down that place, and it's become a symbol of something, personal achievement, or having accomplished something, or even just the dream of doing so. But just then, it was just us. And Ellen started to run, and I put the rig on, and I started to run down behind her. Well, I mean, here you go. I mean, this is what's happening now. People are coming from all over the world, you know? It's great. Tour buses full of wrestling fans pull up down here, and they all run up these steps. Look at this. Look. This is fabulous. Isn't that amazing? This has become a big deal, you know. But back then, we just did it. And Ellen went all the way to the bottom, and then she came back up, and I came back up behind her. I do specifically remember there was grass in between the steps. I mean, the steps were just the steps. They weren't an icon. Now, Rocky and Philly and the Art Museum are all part of the American experience. You see people come from Australia in tour buses, and wrestling fans from Melbourne come charging up the steps, and then they all take movies of each other, and then they gather around and look at the movies. It's unbelievable. There are 72 steps here. And I went off to Los Angeles, sold that rig in 1 day flat to the first company that we showed it to. Within months, the man who was about to direct Rocky, John Avildsen, saw that demo and he said, "Oh my God, you know, how did you do that? And where are those steps?" And that's why that shot is in Rocky. And it's a killer, because within a few months after that, I was chasing Stallone up those steps, because that film came on like that afterward, a little B picture in Philly. As they say, the rest is history. So suddenly, I'm shooting Rocky in Philadelphia. Rocky was a B picture that would have been looked down upon in any film capital. It was a tiny production, and we had shot moving shots all over Philly, chasing him through the railroad yards and under the arcades near the Independence Hall and up Broad Street at the very first light. And the combination, the city never really seen in Hollywood, the gritty eastern city, those long streets with the row houses, the elevated train going by, which of course we'd wait for and have a guy a block away queuing us when the train went, so that very evocative thing could happen in the background. Sly's brother, singing around a lighted barrel of trash, which is a very Philly thing. And finally, the most amazing, wonderful shot, which is probably the first vehicle shot ever made like this. We drove up the middle of the Italian market, and I sat in the back of a van with the doors tied open on an apple box with this camera, because it's a vile road. The van is bounding around up and down. And here's Stallone running, now running like a god up the street, looking very self-confident, I must say. And he got the attention of people on either side, the vendors for all these fruits and vegetables, because that's what happens at this market. We ran through cascades of, the stuff that was pouring out of the old bins, old fruit and the stuff that didn't sell and so on. And guys would throw him an apple spontaneously that wasn't planned for. And the shot that followed it was down on the docks where this ship from the grain trade, the Moshelu, had just been tied up. We swung around and shot out the side door of the van, and we drove along parallel to the Moshelu, and Sly ran. He could run really, really fast. We're looking at that ship entering the frame, and Stallone is running fast, and we're driving along, and he puts on a burst of speed for real, no special effect. He goes faster and faster, and the shot again has that sort of godlike serenity with this ship entering and him speeding up, and the very next cut is he's headed up the steps of the Art Museum. I mean, you couldn't fail to knock an audience flat with that, and boy, did it ever. Rocky is, of course, important to Philly. We kind of feel like, at times, I suppose, like an underdog because we're 90 miles from New York. I was, as a filmmaker, overshadowed somewhat by New York filmmakers. But I think that there's something more than that. I think that there was something startlingly realistic and unpretentious about that movie. There was something so heartfelt in it and so without guile. And that was a very peculiar time. And to have that connection with a guy like Stallone's character, Rocky Balboa, was unusual. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't slick, it wasn't contrived, it wasn't sophisticated. It just felt inevitable from the first line. We shot stuff everywhere in that movie that had never been done before. The stuff in the ring, the stuff in that meat locker. There was no way in the world to make that shot weaving between those sides of beef unless you happen to have the old Brown stabilizer. How else are you going to do that? So I had the camera out here, and I was holding these beeves out with my hand was greasy from pushing them out of my own way and trying to sneak through them. I love that stuff. I love to move the camera. I love the three-dimensional look of it. I love the way it tells you things about a set when you move. Tells you the shape of objects. Even though we're looking at a two-dimensional medium, When we start to move, we're actually going through these right eye, left eye positions, and we understand the shape of objects. That, I think, is the thing that pleases me the most, is that we've sort of handed off another instrument in the orchestra. Now we come into the arena, the sports arena in Los Angeles. I was there mainly because I could be certain that the punches would sell. And the idea is if you're faking a punch, there's really only one good angle to see it. The best angle to see it is just that over the shoulder where you have the wide angle effect of the boxer's head snapping back to you, but you can't see the point of contact. Now, of course, the trick is make the punches look like they're real. And the reason I was in the ring, in the sports arena for our few days in the ring, was to try something brand new, which was the camera circling around, looking over the shoulder of one fighter or the other, almost the referee's eye view, if you will, which had never been seen in the ring in this kind of very fluid way of being able to circle with the fighters, because they're always circling, circling, circling. You've got to see it either over the shoulder of the guy throwing the punch or over the shoulder of the guy receiving the punch. And both instances, it looks really real. In the case where you're over the shoulder of the receiver, you have to be prepared to jerk back out of the way if you're close, because Sly threw his head back with fantastic energy and really good timing. So we shot each round with me in the ring, and then we cleared me out so the other cameras could work, and I just hovered around in the outskirts and pretended to be a dolly, because the quarters were too close to have a dolly, and in overhead shot you'd see the rails, so I was able to be useful down there as well. I did forget to remove my very distinctive striped shirt, so of course you can see this odd striped shirt person who looks like he's carrying a sewing machine wandering around, maybe standing by in case someone's boxing shorts were ripped. I mean, who knows what I was doing. It's funny, I expected, of course, that everyone on Earth would immediately want one, and I did not take into account how conservative even a business like the movie business is, by and large. And it was the bold, self-confident people that went for it right away, that knew what they wanted and went for it. It was Haskell Wexler and Hal Ashby for Bound for Glory. It was John Avildsen and company for Rocky. And it was the late, great Conrad Hall and Schlesinger for Marathon Man. Those three films signed it up right away. I worked on all three alternately, which was an amazing experience for me. And it was when we started to teach people how to do it and run these Steadicam workshops and democratize it and let other people in on it and sell them all over the place, that it became a phenomenon, because then everybody's energy, was involved in being able to do this magical thing with a camera and to persuade other people to do it and so on. And that's really when it took off. It turns out to be not just a tool, but an instrument. It turns out to be an instrument that's capable of being played with great sensitivity, not as a show-off kind of thing, but as an ensemble instrument in the act of filmmaking, an instrument that puts the lens in the most subtle way where you want it at the moment and does something in terms of coming at you, where it isn't a zoom, we're moving through space, but we're not calling attention to it and waving a flag and, shooting off firecrackers. We're closing on you. Well, let me give you a quick tour of the machine, all right? It still works the same way that the prototype worked 30 years ago. We fell into probably the best way to do this little trick, or otherwise somebody would have done it differently. But then and now it's a gimbal, which is a lovely bit of goods that isolates the camera in the angular sense, right, Ben? This is Ben. Hi, Ben. An arm that acts like a tireless spring-powered arm that never gets tired. Poor Ben may get tired, other parts of him, but the arm will never get tired. A spread out mass so that it's very inert, it feels like roughly what, the Lusitania in terms of mass, right?
It's pretty tough.
The Queen Mary 2. And then a video monitor so that you can see what you're shooting, because if you tried to have your eye on the finder while you're walking around, it would never work. So as it turns out, the combination of spread out mass, gimbal, arm, and monitor, those four things were the basis for a patent that lasted its entire life. It was never successfully busted, and it is still the way these things are made all over the world. We love that. What I've continued to do is invent stuff. It always kind of surprises me, but it usually comes for the same reason, which is somebody needs or wants something, or I want something that doesn't exist. And so I've kept on doing it in the years since Rocky. In the early 80s, invented something called the Skycam, which is a stabilized camera on wires that are, taken up and let out by computer so it can fly anywhere in a football field. I did a camera called the MobiCam that chases the swimmers underwater for the Barcelona Olympics. I did the dive cam that the camera falls with the divers in Atlanta. They're all, oddly enough, derived from the original conception of the Steadicam. There's something about balance in the end that is why the Steadicam is elegant. It's clear watching somebody do it that the object itself has poise of some sort. Sly came to the American Society of Cinematographers and handed off an award to me a couple of years ago. And I said to him at the time, that was a fantastic gift for all of us, that movie. Thank you for that. Thanks for that script and thanks for that idea. It was a great experience. That shooting was in nearly 30 years ago. We've all, of course, been through an amazing amount ever since. And I think we're all getting now remarkably mellow and beginning to really enjoy the after effects of having done that remarkable thing in that remarkable time. Wonderful time in the movie business to make that little bit of innovation and that kind of a movie.
To me, is an art form. It is a temporary art form that is created and destroyed on a daily basis. But it is still an art form, especially when practiced by what I consider a makeup artist as opposed to a makeup person. My experience with Rocky was an interesting one because it came out of the blue. They told me that it was going to be a fight picture, and it was a low-budget fight picture. There wasn't a lot of money in it, but we needed some swollen eyes and some pieces, and there was going to be some blood. Sly's an interesting person to work with. He's a multifaceted individual, and it was his baby. This could be a make or break. All of a sudden, his dream is laying here in front of him. If this movie fails, where does he go from there? He and Sasha lived in this little one-bedroom apartment in Hollywood. Their bed was a mattress that was on the floor. Hanging from the chandelier in the living room was a punching bag and his dog Butkus. And Sly and I would sit on the mattress in the bedroom with the blinds pulled, and he would show me Super 8 films. And he'd say, now I'm going to take a punch here, and he's basically working out the choreography of the fights. And so we literally choreographed the whole fight from watching other fights and seeing how things happen. And then he'd get me pictures and things to work from. So then I went to work and got a cast of his face. At that time, I didn't really have a big lab. I was working in my house, so he came over to my house, and I did a face cast in my kitchen. My grandfather, which started the whole thing, goes back to actually the late 1800s, where he was a wig maker in England. So the family wound up here in Hollywood in the early teens, and basically with a wig shop. One thing that got us kind of started in the business is one day an actor had accidentally shaved off half his mustache and came by in the shop. And he literally duplicated this little mustache. And this was Adolphe Menjou, and they were shooting the original version of the Three Musketeers. And so it's like all of a sudden, Jesus, look what the Westmores did. They saved our butt, so let's go back and see what else they're doing. And that launched the family into the movie business. I have gone all the way from working with Elizabeth Taylor to Rocky, Raging Bull, and 18 years of Star Trek. The process in the very beginning is to get a hold of that script, read through it one time, get all the way through it, get the story idea, and then you go back literally page by page, and you start picking out, and it's usually between the lines. You don't even have to read the dialogue. You just read between the lines, because that's where it'll say, took a jab to the right eye, blood spurted out the mouth. I mean, it'll give you clues through the script if the writer is really putting his visual into the script. Sly's makeup, just as plain makeup originally, consisted of little eyepieces that went right in here, little plastic eyepieces that had cuts in them. And of course, to this day, he still claims he lost all his eyebrows due to me. Putting these things on, pulling them off. With Rocky, it was the reality of what really happens to the skin, not what I think it's going to do, what really happens. That's all very important to the reality of what the viewer is going to take in. Then they believe. They believe what's going on. This is my lab, very much like what I had in the days of Rocky back in the 70s. And a lot of the techniques are still the same today as they were then. And these are the actual molds that I used for the film. The same very heavy-duty plaster Sly had to wear, little pieces over his eyes every single day as the Rocky character. And this is the mold. This is above his eye, right here, and those are the little teeny pieces. And they were pressed out of plastic. That way they could glue on and take a Q-tip with acetone on it, go around the edges, and dissolve it right into his eyes. So when you see the close-ups of Rocky, you'll notice all these little cuts over his eyes. And every single pair came out of this little mold here. I have actually used these today when something came up where I needed a swollen eye, and I've used the same pieces. And of course, people are always, actors today are thrilled when I say, this is something I used on Stallone. You know, they're thrilled, I'm wearing Stallone's pieces. One of the interesting scenes with Mickey, the character played by Burgess Meredith, that people aren't familiar with, and I thought, gee, this is really obvious. And until it's pointed out that he was wearing cauliflower ears and a broken nose and a tube shoved up one nostril to literally give his nose this S shape, and the old punch-drunk fighter would glue his ears back and glue in these appliances into them and put little red silk fibers into the plastic so they disappeared right into the skin. For the 3 pictures that he worked in, he wore that every single day. And it's funny, people look at the movie and they think that that's what Burgess really looks like. The final fight of Rocky, which was really the culmination of this whole thing, that everybody runs out of that movie ready to fight.
Put your hands up there, chump.
I'm not fighting. Every round was laid out ahead of time. We knew that we were going to fight for the first 3 rounds and maybe nothing would happen. But then all of a sudden Apollo Creed is going to land a right to one eye and his cheek's going to start swelling a little bit. So round 4, Sly's going to get a little piece. Then in round 5, maybe he's going to hit Apollo Creed over the other eye and it's going to split a little bit and he's going to get a little blood, which happens over here then on Carl. Then by the time we get to round 6, the little piece here on Sly, it has to be changed to get a little bigger, and Carl's cut over here is starting to swell a little bit. And this goes on like that all the way through with both eyes on both characters until round 15, to the point where Sly's eye is totally closed up. Continuity is very important when you're doing pictures like this, because you have to keep track of the swelling going on, bruises coming and going. My thought all the time is what looks real, what looks real. It can't look like a studio, it can't look strange, you know, it has to always have this touch of realism to it. Down here on the table, when we had the multiple molds that changed, these are actually Sylvester Stallone's eyes. The mold was taken, the entire face cast, where he sat in a chair, and had an alginate cast taken of his face, poured in plaster, and then I took pieces of it off. And these pieces were embedded into this large plate, and you can notice it's also very, very thick, because that way I can bake them over and over and over again. In making the progression of appliances, and if you notice inside the mold here, there's marked a 1, and in this plate over here, there's a 3. And they went from this size here to larger and smaller, and that way in my continuity I could keep track of if they had a number 1 piece on next to number 2, number 3, or going down the opposite way if swelling was going down. And that way I could pour the rubber into the mold here. Now the foam rubber is made up of liquid latex, and chemicals are added to it to give it body and strength, and it's whipped up in the blenders. They're regular household blenders, and the latex is whipped up to the consistency of chocolate mousse. and then it is poured into these molds. The molds are closed up, and then this mold, when the rubber sets, is put into an oven, and they cook at 200 degrees. So that rubber is put in there, and we vulcanize the rubber the same as if you were making a tire, and the heat in the oven sets it up, makes it nice and firm. This is the same technique that I used on Rocky almost 30 years ago. This is an art form that I enjoy, and I want other people to enjoy. It's not something I want to stand out and say, oh, gee, what a great makeup, but gee, what a great movie, what a great character, that it all becomes part of the film. My Uncle Perce said one time, many, many years ago, the best compliment for a good makeup is no comment at all. You're giving the actors something to work with, to be able to look into the mirror and say, I've been hit in the face, I've been hurt, I feel hurt, I can feel hurt because I look at this and I can see that there's something going on. And as this fight went on, and the face would swell, and Sly could look at that, and Carl could look at that, and they could feel this beating going on. If my pieces didn't work, it blows the visual image of it right away, no matter what else goes on, whether the script was great, the acting was great, everything else was great. There is a reality that has to be there in the wigs, in the bone structure, in the muscle structure, and that's what you need to understand as a special makeup artist. With Carl's skin tone, had to be very careful that things with all the water and the powder and things, that things didn't start looking ghosty or looking pale. So it was a little bit more of a challenge to match up his skin tone, because here we have a piece of rubber on here that has to blend into his natural skin tone. So I am controlling the looks between fair skin and dark skin. You had to put more highlights into Carl's bruises so they would show, as opposed to Stallone's. With those you could put, you put the reds, the purples. But with Carl I had to use more yellows and light greens and things like that to bring out the bruises, so you really got the feel that this man was starting to swell. And so there is a different color palette for both actors. Since there was so much water that we were using too, the blood always had a reality to it, because it would drip and follow like drops and things as it would work its way down the body or work its way down the face. And having to squirt him, I had to get close to him. And I don't know how many times he punched me. And it's like, hey, okay. See, you want to squirt from a little further away, because you'd always take give me a jab in the stomach, Rocky is a success story of which we all got to be part of, and to be able to feel that success, and that there is, the American dream that does work, whether it's on the screen or in his personal life. Everybody had so much faith in the project that they were willing to work extra hard even.
I can't see nothing, gotta open my eye. Come here, miss. You don't want to do it. Well, cut me.
This is one thing that just kind of got passed around from drawer to drawer, and I never lost it. This is the original Cut Me Mick. And of course there's CGI in many ways of doing it today, but we're going back to the old process of the makeup artist special effects type of process. And this razor blade, the edges were rounded off so it wouldn't actually cut Sly. And then a ball, literally from a squirting flower, was taken, a small tube taken across here. So I would take and pull the ball off, fill it with blood, put it back on, and in the scene, all he did was he came across his eye like this, and when the director said, go for it, all they had to do was squeeze the little ball, and the blood shot out of there onto the eye. So that's a wonderful piece of memorabilia.
You don't want to do it. Well, cut me.
It's one of those memorable scenes in movie history, which was one take. I wanted to do it second time. The blood's coming from a different area than you think it is. It's like we fool the audience. And it was our own little magic trick for the movie. It was such an experience. I mean, not only the film, but my association with Sly, that no matter what else I was doing, a Rocky II was a no-brainer to say yes to. Rocky III, the same thing. It's an experience to see a character mature and to be able to go through that whole process, that it was something that I wanted to be part of. It was the leader in not only fight films, but feel-good films. We were going through a period then of really downer, depressed films, and Rocky turned the world around. As a makeup artist, Rocky was one of my biggest challenges to that period in time, and literally set a tone for me in my career from that point on. It's one of the real highlights of my career.